Welding time! This is going to be a high-level overview of the four main types of welding. MMA, not the MMA you're thinking about.
Relax and smiling. Ah!
Or arc welding, or what lots of people call it, is just stick welding. And that's because we've got a rod or a stick that is of the same material that you're going to be welding. You stick that into a good old electro holder, you hook up a ground clamp, and voila, we got a circuit to be able to flow electricity through, which then creates an extremely hot arc, enough to melt two freaking pieces of metal together. Now, stick welding does have its advantages and disadvantages. First of all, well, we've got this rod that is a consumable, so this rod will get used up as you go along. It also is coated with this flux. That is what is required to protect that weld while it's in the molten state. It makes a nice slag peel that is very satisfying to peel off, but that does create a little mess for you. The easy part is we are only dealing with one setting, the amperage, and that is how hot or cold or how much power we're putting through this rod. Set the machine's amperage to the thickness of rod you are using. So I'm starting out with some 3/32, and I'm just starting around 85 to 95 amps. Remember, once the machine is on, you are hot. So if that electrode touches anywhere on the workpiece, it will arc. If you can't strike the arc or nothing happens, try turning up that amperage. And the best part is peeling away that slag. You can get dedicated machines for each process, like a stick-only machine, flux core only. For the ease of this video, I am using the ArcCaptain's new 205 MIG Pro, and that is because it is a multi-process welder, so it can do all of these processes with one machine. Imagine the stick welding rod with the flux on the inside of it, and let's string it out a good 100+ feet and roll it up, and voila, we've got some flux core wire. Now up inside the machine, it grabs the wire off the reel with those rollers and it feeds it through the MIG gun. Even though we are welding with flux core, we are still going to call this the MIG gun. I say it's easier than stick welding because you don't have to worry about striking the arc. As soon as you just get up close to your workpiece, you pull the trigger and the machine automatically feeds out the amount of wire needed or set for what you're welding. Now, before we throw down the weld, we actually got to switch processes if you've got a multi-process machine. Very easy with the ArcCaptain. We've just got 4 to choose from, so we're going to go from the MMA down to the MIG or flux core. So I've got my flux core set, and you'll notice that even with a dedicated flux core machine, you are going to have 2 settings, and that would be your wire speed and voltage. So right up here, I've got an IPM. That would be inches per minute. That is how fast that wire is coming out, and then voltage, it's voltage. Now, if you're just starting out, you don't have to worry or even care about those and what they even say. Every machine will have suggested settings. Go measure your thickness of material, look at the chart, match that up here, and start from there. This machine has Bluetooth capabilities. I can change the settings and or pick the mode within the app on my phone. The key points once you are welding is to maintain a short distance, or what's called the stick out, from the piece. Keep a continuous speed. Like with stick welding, the flux core does create a lot of smoke. It's a dirty process. It has slag as well. It can be cleaned up to show your awesome weld. Whew. If you want those beautiful welds with zero or almost zero cleanup, you're going to be MIG welding. So thus, with no cleanup, it's a lot quicker process. The first thing we got to change is the wire. Flux core does have that kind of gunmetal look to it, versus MIG is that nice shiny copper looking stuff. which is a little deceiving because it's actually not copper wire. It is the same material as your base material, so you can get stainless steels and aluminum, but this is actually a steel wire, and then we are adding gas. Now you can use multiple different types of gas. There's tons of them out there. If you're just getting set up and are overwhelmed by bottles and what to get, I'm telling you right now, get 100% CO2 with an aluminum bottle, just like this. You will not be able to tell a difference if you're just starting out between CO2 and a mixed gas. Get this, because it's cheaper. This is a compressed bottle. I don't want to knock this off. All MIG machines will have a hose, and you hook that up to the machine, and then it will come out actually through the gun, and then there's these little tiny holes up here on the MIG gun itself. And once you add a true MIG nozzle, this nozzle will actually direct those gases over the weld, which in effect is doing the same thing as the flux with your stick and flux core welding. Now we do need to switch the machine over to MIG welding, which is as simple as just choosing which gas I'm using on. So there's a little setting that says flux, and then there's one that says CO2. Once you've got your settings dialed down for a certain project or thickness, you can save those exact settings and go back to them anytime you want. It even will go through and switch the process for you. And a huge important thing, which I've forgotten to do numerous times, and then I get horrible welds and I'm like, what's up? I did not change the polarity. Now, I'm not gonna dive into why or what the theory. All you have to know is that for flux core welding, your electrode needs to be hooked up to the negative terminal, and for MIG, the electrode is positive. And it can be done most of the time on machines as simple as just switching out these little DINS connections, just flip-flopping them from one to the other. MIG is awesome for auto body, small sheet type metal, and on up. Adding a little oscillating motion, you can get those sweet patterns, you know, beautiful clean welds. And of course the drawback would be you're adding gas, which there is an initial startup cost, which is pretty expensive. But if you're going to be doing it a whole bunch, it's worth the investment. This new ArcCaptain, it is throwing out a beautiful, very consistent weld, which definitely helps out when you're just starting out welding. Now on to TIG welding. It took me many years to dive into it, but I'm glad I did. Now, I'm not gonna make this a 30-minute video because there's tons to go into. If you wanna see fine details, check out the links for the videos in the description. Let's just go over how really simple it can be. And that is as easy with a multi-process machine as changing the mode up to TIG. And just like with stick welding, we've only got one thing to deal with, and that is amperage. Now, instead of having a rod that gets used up or wire that gets consumed, we've got this little tungsten electrode that does not get used up, that heats up, and that is what melts your base material. And then like with MIG, we've got a gas coming through the hose, and then it coats your weld as you are welding. This machine does not have a high frequency start. It is what you would call a lift style start. So I will actually be touching my tungsten to the workpiece, lifting off, and that is what creates the arc. You'll notice that I'm hovering over that spot just for a second until I can see the molten puddle going. Then I continue going down the line, adding filler material and building up the weld. Now, since the tungsten doesn't get consumed, there are a ton of other materials that we can do with the exact same setup without changing anything other than your filler rod. Stainless steel, just as easy as steel with TIG welding. Check the description for all the tools I've used, especially the ArcCaptain, and get out there and start welding.